addition to many historical remains of these continents under and above the sea, many written historical works also mention the existence of Mu and Atlantis, and what happened on these continents, and why they sank. James Churchward, who has been researching about Mu for many years, has traveled to many places, such as the South Pacific Islands, Central Asia, Egypt, Siberia, Australia, Central America, and obtained many historical evidence for the existence of Mu. James Churchward's book is convincing, and it is difficult to say that the information in the book is a lie, because the ancient tablets found in different parts of the world, which you will see pictures of in the book, all say the same things. 1. They are all written in prehistoric symbols. Even the symbols describing Mu in different parts of the world are similar. Even the name of Mu is sometimes the same in the inscriptions in different parts of the world. 2. They all state that Mu was a solar empire, the king of kings who ruled the world. 3. They all say that Mu was island-shaped and was torn apart by volcanic activity, floods, and the flood. 4. They all say that Mu was founded and ruled by serpent gods. The fact that ancient texts from the same time period in different parts of the world describe the same things proves that the land of Mu really existed. You can find answers to further speculations on the website of James Churchward's grandson. An 18,000 years old tomb found in the ruins of Kara Kota in the Gobi Desert, and prehistoric earthenware bowls discovered in Glozelle in France in 1925, which bear similarities to Uyghur script, support Colonel Churchward's view that he was referring to certain facts. There are historical inscriptions related to the continent of Mu in almost every part of the world. The tablets of ancient societies, which are unaware of each other, all mention the same sunken continent. Some tablets even indicate the date of Mu's existence and mention the existence of the Mu continent between 200,000 and 70,000 years BC. Germanic legends, Hittite tablets, Egyptian papyri, and Medinet Habu inscriptions all speak of the destruction of Atlantis. It should be noted that these tablets do not mention Atlantis and Mu as a story, legend, or sensation in the style of modern books. The descriptions in these tablets were usually made by people who had a direct organic connection with Mu. The sinking of the continent of Mu is mentioned in all of these ancient tablets below. 2,600 tablets found in 1921 by Dr. William Niven, now in the Mexican Museum. The ancient Maya Buctroano manuscript found in Yucatan, now in the British Museum. The Cortesian Codex of the Book of Mayan, the Madrid Museum. The Lhasa document allegedly discovered by Paul Schliemann in a Buddhist temple in Tibet. Inscriptions in the Temple of Uxmal, Mexico. Inscriptions from the Pyramid of Xochicalcoyotl, Mexico. Parisianus and Dresdensis codexes. The Ramayana epic of India. Silk inscriptions found by archaeologist Sir Mark Aurel Stein in the Tung Hong caves of Turkmenistan in 1907. The Egyptian Book of the Dead mentions the Mu civilization, sometimes partially and sometimes explicitly. In 1850, the amateur British archaeologist Sir Henry Layard managed to find thousands of intact clay tablets. Among these tablets, the story of the flood in the Assyrian language and the Babylonian version of the flood in the Epic of Gilgamesh were discovered. In 1877, excavations conducted by the University of Pennsylvania in the ancient Sumerian city of Nippur uncovered a fragment of a tablet at least 3,700 years old. This tablet also contained another version of the flood, different from the Gilgamesh epic. We will get to the content of these inscriptions. That is what happened on the Mu and Atlantis in a moment. Again, all religions, both monotheistic and polytheistic, speak of a great flood and a savior who foretells it and saves the good people by taking them on board an ark. Let us continue with other historical findings. This stone map was found along with 350 other artifacts during gold excavations in an underground tunnel system in Ecuador in 1984. Professor Kimura, who analyzed the map, concluded that there was once a giant continental island, starting from the northernmost Japanese island and extending all the way down to Taiwan. These luminous pyramid stones and ancient pre-Sanskrit writings found in the same place as this map are most likely from the Mu period. James Churchward found two ancient paintings, one in Egypt and one in North America, that clearly depict the flood. The striking difference between the two paintings is that one shows Mu falling into a pit of fire, while the other shows Mu sinking into the waters. In Mesopotamia, Leonard Woolley found extremely valuable and interesting clay tablets. In these tablets, called Sumerian king lists, non-human rulers who lived before the flood are at the top of the list. Each of these kings lived for about 10,000 years, 15,000 years, and ruled the country for a long time before the flood, and then handed over the administration to humans. The Babylonian texts explain this event by saying something like, "When the kingdom came down from heaven." The same cult exists more or less throughout Mesopotamia. One of the most important surviving documents about the Maya civilization is the Codex Troanus in the British Museum. It states that Mu and Mu'ud were shaken twice and disappeared in one night. In the thousands of years old religion of the natives of the island of Polynesia, there is a belief that ancient civilizations were destroyed by the wrath of God. Our homeland, the kings, lies at the bottom of the ocean, says an ancient Hawaiian legend. The legend of the Zuni tribe says, long, long ago the Zunis were very wicked, and despite the warnings of the above, they did not give up their wickedness until the shadow decided to wipe the people off the face of the earth. So the two great water sources of the world were open, the reservoir above where all the rains are, and the reservoir below which feeds all the springs and streams. Chinese records and the book Aurea Linda also say that the destruction of Atlantis was caused by a shift in the Earth's axis. Some mountains sank and some new mountains rose. It adds, Ignatius Donnelly, a U.S. senator and a prominent Atlantis researcher, characterizes Atlantis as the land before the flood and argues that Atlantis was destroyed by a terrible catastrophe and that very few people escaped on rafts. Murray Hope summarizes the sinking of Mu and Atlantis as follows. In Plato's account, violent natural disasters occurred, accelerated by the approach of the comet. According to an inscription carved on the wall of the Teotihuacan Pyramid, also in Mexico, the sinking of Mu was as follows. The terrible earth tremor that began on the second Maluk of the month of Zak in the year 6 Khan continued until the 13th of Shan. The continent of Mu fell victim to the catastrophe. The land of Mu rose twice and then collapsed in one night. It was covered with water. The earth lifted up and sat down several times. The catastrophe caused the death of 64 million people. In the records of Valmiki, who is also thought to be the author of the ancient Indian epic Ramayana, the inhabitants of Mu are described as great sailors who conquered the world ocean from south to north, west to east, and as great architects who built huge stone temples and palaces. One of the manuscripts found in an ancient Buddhist monastery in Lhasa, Tibet, by the famous archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann reads, "When the star bell fell on the place where is now only sea and sky, the 7 cities with their golden gates and transparent temples quivered and shook like the leaves of a tree in storm. And behold, a flood of fire and smoke arose from the palaces. Agony and cries of the multitude filled the air. They sought refuge in their temples and citadels, and the wise Mu, the hieratic of Ramu, arose and said to them, 'Did not I predict all this?' And the women and the men in their precious stones and shining garments lamented, 'Mu, save us.' And Mu replied, 'You shall die together with your slaves and your riches, and from your ashes will arise new nations. If they forget they are superior, not because of what they put on, but of what they put out, the same lot will befall them. Flame and smoke choked the words of Mu. The land and its inhabitants were torn to pieces and swallowed by the depths in a few months. According to the results of our research, the countries of Mu and Atlantis were countries that dominated the whole world and colonized other countries in the style of America and Russia at that time. The biggest evidence that Mu colonized and ruled the whole world is the pyramids and gigantic ancient structures built in a similar way all over the world, as we will talk about in detail in the future. But other written evidence are the following. Codex Cortesianus describes Mu as the ruler of the whole world, ruling the whole world. The translation of the Mayan pattern in James Churchward's book, The Lost Continent of Mu by James Churchward, is as follows. The solar empire Mu has fallen into an abyss, in a dark region no longer lit by the sun. The other western lands have gone out with it. Its crown no longer rules the world. This information also proves that many of Mu's colonies also suffered from this flood. Naqal texts tell us that the Holy Brothers carried the religion and sciences of Mu to other colonies at least 70,000 years ago. Sir Norman Lockyer's astronomical research showed that at least 4,000 years ago, space science in Britain and space science in Egypt were at a similar level, which led him to conclude that the British and Egyptians had a lot of knowledge thousands of years ago and that they were somehow in contact with each other and exchanged technology. In all the episodes of this documentary series, you will see many proofs that all the artifacts belonging to the ancient period, which are already unknown all over the world, have the same characteristics and were built by the same people in the same period. Those who built these similar megalithic monuments with unknown technology in an unknown ancient period all over the world can only be the Mu or Atlantean civilization that spread and dominated the whole world before the flood. According to the tablets that James Churchward examined in Tibet, and which tell the story of 25,000 years ago according to the inference made from the position of the stars, two large groups of colonizers are described as passing through South America by ships. Churchward also explains that Atlantis is a continent similar to Mu. I have come across an ancient Greek record which states that at the time Atlantis sank, there were 3,000 Athenian soldiers in the country, presumably an invading army. An Egyptian papyrus records that the Greek god Poseidon was the first king of Atlantis, followed by a long succession, also named Poseidon. Atlantis was first shattered by earthquakes and then submerged. In this sense, the fate of Atlantis was a repetition of the fate of Mu. The Egyptian Book of the Dead is a sacred work dedicated to the people who perished in the destruction of Mu, the ancestor of the Egyptians and many other peoples. The Egyptians came from Mu, a land that is dead and no longer exists. I am an Egyptian of pure lineage. My ancestors came from the now lost homeland, Mu, the empire of the sun. An examination of the inscriptions engraved on the ceiling of the Temple of Dendera in Egypt shows that the history of ancient Egypt coincides with that of Mu. In other words, the Egyptian civilization was founded together with Mu. We will see more evidence of this in the future. According to Dr. Henry Schliemann, who is famous for his discovery of ancient Troy, a papyrus scroll, one of the oldest known papyri in the St. Petersburg Museum in Russia, says that Pharaoh sent a reconnaissance team to investigate Mu. The expedition team returned 5 years later without finding any trace of Mu. In another papyrus in the same museum, the Egyptian priest historian Manetho refers to a period of 13,900 years under the rule of the sages, kings of Mu. This papyrus records a period of about 16,000 years ago, coinciding with the beginning of Egyptian history as the peak of the Mu civilization. Again, Heinrich Schliemann found a vase with the inscription from the King Kronos of Atlantis while examining the ruins of Troy in Hisarlik, Turkey. Again, Churchward says the following about the common culture of the world in the pre-flood period. A collection of objects from Tiahuanaco, South America, is in the Louvre in Paris and is identical to what I found among the treasures of Priam. The fact that two vases from two regions as far apart as South America and Troy are of the same shape, the same size, and decorated with identically arranged owl heads is more than coincidence. The more scientific findings progress, the more it becomes clear that this common ancient world culture belonged to an advanced civilization. For example, the Bermuda Triangle, believed to be the location of the sunken continent of Mu or Atlantis, the pyramids of Giza, and the electromagnetic region called the Zone of Silence, known to the American Indians as the Gate of the Gods, are at the same latitude. The fact that these structures were built in harmony with each other is of course not a coincidence, but shows that these regions are connected to each other